what we have been looking at in our encounter with Buddhism and shamanism, we've been looking at the way in which they are both the psychology of wholeness. We've looked at how they both have the process of initiation as a process of learning and growth. We've looked at how visionary experience and working with dreams is an integral part of wisdom gathering in both traditions. We've looked at energy medicine, which is at the heart of both Buddhism and shamanism. And I'll be teaching. I was just talking with Jean about the class in energy medicine that I'll be teaching more intensively next spring. So take a look there. I'll be doing it through Sacred Stream. And then we looked at, we had this radical thought where we looked at we compared plant medicine with Buddhism and actually found a lot of similarities there. And in terms of the encounter with the transcendent. And we're going to continue that exploration of the encounter with the transcendent tonight, because we're going to be looking at mediumship as part of both traditions. And we're going to look in shamanic practice, we're going to look at the shamanic journey, and then also the mediumship, which is a big part of shamanic practice. And then in Buddhism, we're going to be exploring two very important relationships that major thinkers in Mahayana Buddhism had with mediums, through mediumship. And we're going to be looking at Asanga's relationship with Maitreya, and we're going to be looking at Tsongkhapa's relationship with Manjushri, which is one of my favorite relationships in the whole world to study. So I'm so glad I get to talk about it tonight. So in both systems, and I'm going to show you in detail, in both systems you have a process of moving into the non-ordinary reality of, in Buddhism, through meditation, and in shamanism through generally the journey or plant medicine, where you move into the realm of the transcendent experience. And in Buddhism, that transcendent experience is generally characterized by, in Mahayana Buddhism, as one of the many deities. And in shamanic practice, excuse me, sorry. In shamanic practice, that expression is generally in the forms of guides or helping spirits. Oh, thank you. That's nice of you. Thank you. I have some in my pocket, but this looks intriguing. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Well, thank you. I hope I don't. I'll try to not be too. I won't try not to talk with my mouth full too much. So, in Buddhism, that experience of the transcendent is expressed through one of the deities, and you're moving in meditation into those realms. But then there's also the experience of mediumship, where you have it expressed very clearly with the Nechung oracle, and also in these relationships with these major thinkers in Buddhism, where you have that transcendent wisdom coming from that unseen realm into the manifest world. And in shamanic practice, you have, through the journey or through the plant medicine experience, you have the connection with forms of helping spirits that take the form of nature, that are found in the non-ordinary cosmography of in the invisible world of power behind the natural forms in shamanic practice. And again, you still, and then you also have that experience of that transcendent wisdom coming in through mediumship. And so I think it's very interesting that these two very different forms of ancient wisdom have this kind of parallel. And so I wanted to explore that this evening. So let's talk a little bit about, probably you're less familiar with shamanic forms of knowing than Buddhist forms of knowing. So let's spend a little time with that first. Shamanism is a practice of trying to understand and perceive the wisdom of the earth. And that is done through moving into an altered state of awareness and exploring the unseen power that is considered and known to lie behind the different forms of nature. So you're exploring the spirit of the tree, or you're exploring the spirit of the lake, right? And in shamanic practice, you have a very strong similarity across cultures and across time and across space, where you have this different practices. They look a little bit different from a cultural point of view, but they all have the same thrust, which is to understand the wisdom of the earth and to bring that wisdom into the affairs of humans, to do several kinds of processes that shamans are responsible for. Shamanic practitioners are they're the doctors, they're the responsible for healing, they're the mediators, they're the ones who care for the dying and help the dying pass. They're the ones who are the ceremonialists, and they're the ones that are the diviners. So again, across time and space and different cultures with different cultural trappings, you have someone within the society that is playing this role, and they are being informed and guided by the wisdom of the earth through the relationship with helping spirits that they establish relationships with. So, as I mentioned, there is a cosmography, a shamanic cosmography, an inner cosmography that is shared by most shamanic cultures. And that inner cosmography is characterized by three worlds: the upper world, the middle world, and the lower world. And the shaman travels through, with the help of the drum, moving their state of consciousness into an altered state of awareness so they can perceive these unseen forces behind the forms of nature. And they establish relationship with these, they're called helping spirits in most traditions, and they work with them quite literally as a channel, where when they're working in the realm, when they're contacting them in the realm where they reside, they're moving into that realm. But there's a process called power filling in shamanic practice, where the shamanic practitioner calls the power of the helping spirits into their system. And there's an expression called being a hollow bone. And as a shamanic practitioner, you actually aren't doing anything. Well, you're doing a lot because you're tuning your own energy system. You're clearing yourself so that you can tune your energy system, but you're following the guide's process, right? And of course, when you're working as a channel, the helping spirit is coming through you and offering wisdom to whomever asks. There are different situations where that might happen, where you might have someone working as an oracle, and that's what we're going to look at tonight, actually. And we're actually, in order to illustrate the process of oracle work in shamanic practice, we're going to actually work with Buddhism, with the Nechung oracle. I just like that. That's so interesting that we're doing that. So, and then, but I'd like to spend a little bit of time looking at the shamanic journey, because the shamanic journey is that process in shamanism where you are moving into the realm of the unseen spirits, and you're establishing relationships with them. And what I'd like to do to help you understand this process better is to read you a journey that one of my students did, her first journey. And it gives you a peek into the world of the shamanic journey. And here she's establishing a relationship. It's her first journey, and she's establishing a relationship with the helping spirit. And she's listening to a drum. As the drumming started, I focused on the swimming hole I used to swim in every summer when I was a kid. The swimming hole is in the bend of a slow-moving river in Iowa, near the farm where I grew up. There's a big rope hanging over the swimming hole. You can climb one of the walnut trees on the bank of the river and catch hold of the rope and then swing out over the water and drop in. I must have done this 1,000 times, and I did it again with the intention of going to the lower world through the river. So you access the different parts, you access the different worlds through different openings, and the lower world is accessed identically across different cultures by going through water, going into a hole in the ground, going into a hole of a tree, going in through a cavern. So here she's going through the river. I splashed onto the water after letting go of the rope and found myself dropping like a stone. I kept my mind focused. I'm going to the lower world to meet my teacher in animal form. I kept dropping, going lower and lower in the water. And suddenly I was on a sandy beach. The sand was luminescent and sparkling. I was mesmerized by the grains of sand. They were like jewels. I remembered to keep my attention on the fact that I was here to meet my teacher in animal form. So I started walking along the beach looking for a teacher. The sand almost sang under my feet as I walked. It was definitely magical, this sand. I walked for a long time without really seeing any animals, so I decided to sit down on the beach and wait for an animal to come find me. Soon I heard a rustling in the bushes, and well, I remember this journey. Yes, okay. Soon I heard a rustling in the bushes, and I decided to go up and investigate what was going on in the bushes. But as I stood up, I looked into the water of the lake. In the water's reflection was the image of a huge brown bear standing behind me, looking into the water with me. At first I was scared. The bear was huge, but it had these very kind eyes, so I settled down and just looked at its reflection in the water. I was afraid to turn around because it was so big. Finally, I remembered to ask, "Are you my teacher in animal form?" As I asked the question, the bear's eyes fixed on me in a very powerful way. I felt all this love and kindness coming from the bear. It was filling the lake where her reflection was, and soon the whole lake was filled with this love and this kindness. I sat for a long time just trying to take in how much love was all around me. I knew this must mean the bear was my teacher. I sat there for a long time as the bear's eyes, then the whole bear, then the bear's eyes, and then the whole bear reflected in the lake before me. I never did turn around. I really could not move for a long time. But then I heard the change in the rhythm of the drumming, and I knew I had to go back to the place I had started. I thanked Bear and started walking back along the beach with the glistening sand, then jumped back into the water and swam back up to the swimming hole of my childhood. I grabbed the rope hanging over the water and pulled myself out and swang over the riverbank where the walnut trees were. So this is a beautiful, beautiful journey. It gives you a glimpse into the numinous world of the journey. And not every journey is like this, but many are. There's a magical quality to them. And what the journey does is it helps a person establish a relationship with powers of the unseen and begin to develop that relationship. And that is a big part of the shamanic practice, where you work to ask questions and establish understanding about different shamanic processes with the helping spirit. So that's going into the realm of the transcendent power in shamanic practice. Now I'd like to talk about the process of calling that transcendent power into ordinary reality. And that is and it's most clearly seen in oracle work or mediumship. So, and as I said, I'm using example from Tibetan Buddhism to demonstrate this shamanic practice because it is so shamanic. And this is a reading from His Holiness the Dalai Lama's autobiography. And where he talks about his relationship with the Nechung Oracle. The Nechung Oracle is a field of transcendent power that has guided all of the Dalai Lamas, and he describes his relationship with it at length here. And he also describes the process of that transcendent power inhabiting the medium as the Nechung Oracle comes through and speaks. So this is quoting from his. I'm doing a lot of reading. I'm sorry, but I'm trying to give you examples. This is from his autobiography. For hundreds of years now, it has been traditional for the Dalai Lama and the government to consult Nechung during the New Year festivals. In addition, he might well be called upon at other times if they have specific queries. I myself have dealings with him several times a year. This may sound far-fetched to 20th century Westerners, or 20th century Western readers. Even some Tibetans, mostly those who consider themselves progressive, have misgivings about my continued use of this ancient method of intelligence gathering. But I do so for the simple reason that as I look back over the many occasions when I have asked questions of the oracle, on each one of them, time has proved that his answer was correct. This is not to say that I rely solely on the oracle's advice. I do not. I seek his opinion in the same way as I seek the opinion of my cabinet, and just as I seek the opinion of my own conscience. I consider the gods to be my upper house. The cabinet constitutes my lower house. Like any other leader, I consult both before making a decision on affairs of state. And sometimes, in addition to Nechung's counsel, I also take into consideration certain prophecies. In one respect, the responsibility of Nechung and the responsibility of the Dalai Lama towards Tibet are the same. Though we act in different ways, my task is that of leadership, and it's peaceful. His, in his capacity as protector and defender, can be wrathful. However, although our functions are similar, my relationship with Nechung is that of commander to lieutenant. I never bow down to him. It is for Nechung to bow to the Dalai Lama. Yet we are very close, friends almost. When I was small, it was touching. Nechung liked me a lot and also took great care of me. For example, he noticed that if I dressed carelessly or improperly, he would come over and rearrange my shirt or adjust my robe or so on. Nechung has always shown respect for me, even when his relationships with the government have deteriorated as they did during the last few years of the Regency. He invariably responds enthusiastically whenever asked anything about me. At the same time, his replies to questions about government policy can be crushing. Sometimes he just responds with a burst of sarcastic laughter. That might not be a bad response these days. Sorry, excuse me. Sorry. Dealing with Nechung is by no means easy. It takes time and patience during each encounter before he'll open up. He's very reserved and austere, just as you would imagine a grand old man of ancient times to be. Nor does he bother with minor matters. His interest is only in the larger issues, so it pays to frame questions accordingly. He also has definite likes and dislikes, but he does not show them very readily. Nechung has his own monastery in Dharamsala, but usually he comes to me. On formal occasions, the kuten, the medium. So this is where it becomes very, very shamanic in nature. The kuten is dressed in an elaborate costume consisting of several layers of cloth, topped by a highly ornate robe of silk brocade, which is covered with ancient designs in red, blue, green, and yellow. On his chest, he wears a circular mirror. Almost all shamanic practitioners, when they're doing mediumship work, will work with a mirror, which is surrounded by clusters of turquoise and amethyst, its polished steel flashing with the Sanskrit mantra corresponding to Dorje Drachtin. Before the proceeding begins, he puts on a short harness which supports 4 flags and 3 victory banners. Altogether, this outfit weighs more than 70 pounds, and the medium, when not in trance, can hardly walk in it. This is pretty interesting, right? It's a lot. I want to tell a story, but I'm going to keep going. The ceremony begins with chanted invocations and prayers, accompanied by the urgings of horns, cymbals, and drums. This is exactly how shamanic practitioners call spirits. After a short while, the Kutan enters his trance, having been supported until then by his assistants, who now help him over to a small stool set before my throne. Then, as the first prayer cycle concludes and the second begins, his trance begins to deepen. At this point, a huge helmet is placed on his head. This item weighs approximately 30 pounds, though in former times it weighed over 80. Now the Kutan's face transforms, becoming rather wild before puffing up to give him an altogether strange appearance, with bulging eyes and swollen cheeks. His breathing begins to shorten and he starts to hiss violently. Then, momentarily, his respiration stops. At this point, the helmet is tied in place with a knot so tight that it would undoubtedly strangle the Kutan if something very real were not happening. The possession is now complete, and the mortal frame of the medium expands visibly. So you see the spirit coming into him. Next, he leaps up with a start, grabbing a ritual sword from one of his attendants, begins to dance with a slow, dignified, yet somehow menacing step. Then he comes in front of me and either prostrates fully or bows deeply from the waist until his helmet touches the ground, before springing back up, the weight of his regalia counting for nothing. The volcanic energy of the deity can barely be contained within the earthly frailty of the medium, who then moves and gestures as if his body were made of rubber and driven by a coiled spring of enormous power. There follows an interchange between Nechung and myself, where he makes ritual offerings to me. Then I ask any personal questions I have for him. After replying, he returns to his stool and listens to questions put by members of the government. Before giving answers to these, Kutan begins to dance again, thrashing his sword above his head. He looks like a magnificent, fierce Tibetan warrior chieftain of old. As soon as Dorje Drachtin has finished speaking, the medium or the Kutan makes a final offering before collapsing, a rigid and lifeless form, signifying the end of the possession. Simultaneously, the knot holding his helmet in place is untied in a great hurry by his assistants, who then carry him out to recover while the ceremony continues. So, this is, shamanic practitioners are often consulted for the same reason, to ask, especially you see the practice of shamanic, in shamanic practice, the practice of mediumship is often centered around divination, like what's happening in time and space, different from here, like what's happening in the future, or what's happening over and 20 miles away. Is that group of pear trees in bloom yet or in fruit yet? Like that kind of the divining what's happening outside of the current time and space. So here you have 2 examples, even though I used the Buddhist example, 2 examples of how shamanic practice works with the unseen transcendent powers in the realms where they are considered to reside through the shamanic journey, and then the process of calling those powers into ordinary reality through mediumship. Okay. I would normally take questions, but I kind of want to keep going. Okay, so now we're going to move to Buddhism, and we're going to be talking about two very interesting relationships where mediumship and the process of moving into the realm of the deities is demonstrated. So, of course, in Buddhism, we have the practice of meditation, and that begins with the shamatha meditation and moves into vipassana or insight meditation, and in Vajrayana or tantric practice, it moves into deity meditation. And here we're talking about deity meditation, where you are working, having quieted your mind and begun to be able to use your mind to focus it in a particular direction without getting a lot of monkey mind kicking up again. Then you're able to move into the field of the deity and experience the power of the deity through meditative concentration. So this is something where you are moving into the realm of the deities. Now, in Mahayana Buddhism, there are so many deities that are expressions or step downs of different types of transcendent power. And of course, you have someone like the 21 Taras, in particular the green Tara, who is considered to be a field of sustenance and help that many people appeal to in times of difficulty. You have the medicine Buddha, who is blue in nature, part of the blue ray, who is actually the source. Interestingly enough, all of Tibetan medicine is said to have been channeled by a medium channeling the medicine Buddha, right? And then we have, of course, Chenrezig or Avalokiteshvara, the Buddha of infinite compassion. Then we have Manjushri, who we're going to be talking about, the Buddha of wisdom. And we have Maitreya, the future Buddha, which we're going to be talking about, and many more. And in Tantric or Vajrayana practice, the task in deity meditation is to be able to move into the field of the deity and hold that power. And we're going to hopefully do that tonight a little bit in meditation, the meditation part. So I want to talk about, first I'd like to talk about this experience of trying to move into the field of the deity, and then also calling the deity to you, that Asanga did with Maitreya. So Asanga, of course, many of you will know, was an incredibly brilliant thinker who was born around 4000 CE, and there's so many good stories about Asanga before he developed the Yogacara school and totally changed Buddhism forever. But the famous story of Asanga is that he really, really longed to know Maitreya, and he wanted to encounter Maitreya in his meditations, and he had spent many years studying and developing his both sutra and tantric skills, and he decided that he was going to go on retreat until he could encounter Maitreya face to face and be with the deity. So he retired to a cave, and he meditated for a long time, for 3 years, and never saw Maitreya once. So he's like, okay, I'm out of here, I'm done, So he's leaving the cave, and on his way out, he saw a crow flying into its nest, which it was in the rock face. And on the rock face, you could see the sort of a rubbing of the rock where the crow's wings had rubbed against the rock. It was like a little bit shinier than the rest of the rock, that had been created by the friction of its wings on the rocks as it came into its nest in the hole in the rock. And Asanga looks at it and he goes, I must not give up so easily. The crow must have been flying to and fro from that nest for a long time for those marks to be that big. I'm going to go back and meditate a little more. I'm not going to give up yet. So he goes back, dying to see Maitreya, focusing his mind. After another 3 years, he's like, didn't find Maitreya. He's like, okay, I'm out of here. And then on his way out, down the hill, he heard this tip, 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 the sound of water drops falling on the rock. And there he saw some deep holes in the surface of the rock. And he thought, if something as soft as water can make holes on this hard rock, I must carry on. I must be able to, I must keep working. So he went back to the cave. Okay. So he continued on his meditation. Another 3 years goes by and not a peep out of Maitreya, right? So he's like, okay, I'm done, I'm out. And he felt discouraged and he lost his patience. And he was walking in a nearby village and he saw an old man making needles from iron pieces by rubbing the surface of the pieces with smooth cotton cloth. And he said, I'm just finishing this one and I've already made all those over there, he said. And Asanga said, if it's possible to put such an effort into something as trivial as this, I must put great effort on something as great as enlightenment. And so he went back to the cave and he meditated for 3 more years. Now 12 years have gone by, and Asanga, since he first started, and he was still unhappy with his progress. And he said, okay, I'm out. I'm really going down to the village this time. And he walked down to the village and he heard a noise. And he heard a dog crying in pain. He realized the noise was this dog crying in pain. And he looked for the dog and he found it. And the dog was infested with maggots. His body was so rotten that he had only front legs and some part and a little bit more of his body was left, and he was in serious pain. Asanga felt the pain of the dog, and he rushed with a stick to remove the maggots from the wound. But then, as the stick touched the wound, the dog gave a cry of pain. And so Asanga said, I'm going to try to remove the worms with my fingers. So he tried to remove them with his fingers, but still the dog felt the pain when his fingers touched the wound. So Asanga thought, I have to use my tongue, it's softer. And as he removed the worms from the wound, the dog transformed into the light body of Maitreya. Do you want to put that up? We have a picture of Maitreya that Sarana has located for us. And one of the qualities of Maitreya is the golden light that emanates from Maitreya, which is, we will see it soon. The light will be here. There it is. Which glows even in daylight, and the light rays shoot out in all directions. Asanga was thrilled to see Maitreya, but the pain he had to endure for this moment was so great. So he asked Maitreya, "Oh, great one, I had to go through so much pain. You did not come to me when I wanted to see you, but here you are when I have no more desires." Duh. We should learn from that one, right? Let's learn that one, okay? Maitreya replied, "Dear, I was always near you, but you were unable to see me. Now that your compassion for the helpless dog has removed the cloud of your karma, you are able to see me. If you don't believe me, you can test my words. Carry me on your shoulder and check and see if anyone sees me. So a Sangha carried Maitreya on his shoulder. He put the dog on his shoulder and said, "Do you see what I'm carrying on my shoulders?" as he walked through the town. "Please tell me, what am I carrying?" Most people laughed at him, thinking he was a fool, because no one saw anything on his shoulder. An old woman, who must have been a kind person, saw a dead dog on his shoulder. "You are carrying a dead dog," she replied. Another person, who was a good slave, well, we don't like this political thing here, but it's part of the scripture. Another person, who was a good slave to his master, saw the feet of Maitreya. "You are carrying someone on your shoulder," he said. Now a Sangha was sure that nobody could see Maitreya because of their karma. So Maitreya asked a Sangha, "What is your wish now? What do you want to do?" And a Sangha said, "I want to spread the teachings of the great enlightened one, the Buddha." "Then come with me." So here Maitreya has come into this realm, and now he's taking him to Tushita heaven. So then they started ascending to the higher realm of existence called Tushita heaven. And a Sangha held an end of Maitreya's robe, and it enabled him to rise with him. And in that realm, a Sangha studied for the teachings for 50 years. Now, those of you that know about Pure Land Buddhism know a little bit about Tushita heaven. This magical place where all of the teachings are being taught all the time by all these different masters, all these bodhisattvas. It's a place where, many practitioners strive, request to be born in the Yogen Chetsen, the courtyard of Maitreya and Tushita heaven. I think about that place a lot myself, I'd like to wind up there. Okay, I'll go there. But he went to Tushita heaven for 50 years and studied and learned everything there was to learn. And then he returned, and he brought that wisdom as a medium into the Mahayana practice and established a whole school called the Yogacara school, the mind-only school, which had tremendous influence on the development of Mahayana thought and practice. And let me see if I can tell you anything more about. And he wrote, of course, the Great Compendium, and a set of philosophical works that became classics of Indian Buddhist tradition. Maitreya is the regent and is said to have entrusted these profound, vast instructions to a Sangha as he was in Tushita heaven. So he's bringing this forth as an oracle. And the compendium of his writings provides a comprehensive description of the Bodhisattva's view, meditation, and enlightened activities. And of course, Bodhisattvas are those who have attained a certain level of enlightenment and decide, rather than hang out, and just chill in enlightenment, they return to the realm of suffering to help other beings. So this was, a pretty major achievement that happened through the encounter with this transcendent body of knowledge, both within the realm of that being and also having that being come into this realm. So I'd like to talk about one other very interesting relationship between an oracle and mediumship in Buddhism, in Tibetan Buddhism. And that is Tsongkhapa and Manjushri. And if you have not read Thubten Jinpa's book, The Buddha and the Land of Snows, I highly recommend it. It is a comprehensive biography of Tsongkhapa. And Tsongkhapa was born in the 1357 and in Amdo, in the province of Tibet. And there were many miraculous, they say that there were many miraculous events around his birth. And at the age of 16, he left Amdo to study, and he studied with many prominent teachers. And he concentrated on the Perfection of Wisdom Sutras and the 5 treatises of Maitreya, along with many other books or texts which he made commentary on. And as he gained a very rigorous intellectual training and had a very wide knowledge of both Sutra and Tantra during this period. And he was already determined to combine scholarship with the practice of both Sutra and Tantra. And he continued to receive many tantric empowerments from a number of important masters. And he was dedicated to attaining the correct understanding of reality. And he had significant experiences when he entered into meditation. And he encountered in his studies, he encountered a very interesting Lama Umapa. Mbapa. It's like, I can't say it correctly. Mbapa. I'm just going to say Umpapa. Umapa. Okay. And Lama Umapa had become a monk because Lama Umapa had been a goat herd and he'd been hanging out with the goats. And Manjushri came to him, and this visionary experience, he had this like total transformation. And he started studying Buddhism, and he realized that he could actually channel Manjushri in meditation. He began to channel Manjushri. And when Tsongkhapa caught wind of this, he was like, all right, I want to talk to Manjushri because I have these points of practice that I want to have information about. So what, can you imagine this encounter? Or these encounters, because there were many encounters over the years where this incredibly learned scholar is speaking with this field of transcendent wisdom that is being channeled through Lama Umapa. And through all of the answers, he's like fine points of practice, trying to, on the nature of emptiness in particular, really interested on the nature of emptiness and how you arrive at an understanding of the proper understanding of the nature of emptiness. So he had many sessions with Lama Umapa where he had direct communication with Manjushri, and they spent periods of retreat together, during which Umapa conveyed to Tsongkhapa Manjushri's advice and responses to questions concerning the understanding of reality. Would that be great? I mean, I want to do this. I want to try this. I'll tell you something. What are you doing next year? Well, I do it every day. Actually, I happen to be a channel, actually, which is why I'm talking about this. I have a whole interesting set of tales that I could tell you, but yes, I think one day that, I mean, it would. I'm going to try to channel Manjushri sometime. So anyway, we'll see. I won't do it right now. Don't worry. Okay. Okay. So eventually, Tsongkhapa himself began experiencing visions of Manjushri, and Manjushri began directly bestowing empowerments to Tsongkhapa, and so he became his own sort of oracle and continued developing a lot of different texts. He established the Gelug school of Buddhism. Both Asanga and Tsongkhapa reestablished monasteries. They both reestablished Buddhist practice. They had huge influence on the development of Mahayana Buddhism through their connection with these fields of transcendent knowledge. And so it's really, I mean, when in Buddhism, I'm kind of like, I'm very rime, I embrace all Buddhism, if it's Buddhism, I'm there, if it's Dharma of any kind, I'm there, but I have a good friend who's a teacher, who's a Theravadan teacher, And he has got no patience for any of this, like, all of this channeled information that changed the practice in Mahayana, he just doesn't want to hear it. And it's all I want to talk about, right? So, but we're still friends. We just don't talk about the Dharma too much. We just do the Dharma together. We don't talk about it. But I mean, we can't, in some ways, we can say that the course of Buddhism was changed by this process of meeting the field of transcendent wisdom within the realm where it resides, and then calling that wisdom into the realm of human affairs. So similar to shamanic practice, right? And it is really, I mean, you wonder what Buddhism would be without Tsongkhapa, right? You wonder what it would be without a Sangha, right? It would be the Pali Canon. Oh, here we go. Love the Pali Canon. No, I'm just playing. It's a joke that we got that with my friend who's Theravada, that we have, yeah. And of course, it still is the Pali Canon. Of course, it's a basic foundational of all Buddhism, but there's this articulation that would never have happened without this intercession of this transcendent power. Oh, could we see the picture of Manjushri? Sorry, I forgot. Manjushri, by the way, so Maitreya, so let's talk a little bit about both Manjushri and Maitreya. We've talked about Asanga and Tsongkhapa. So Manjushri is the Buddha of wisdom. And there you saw him for a moment, and he will be back.
He's also in the alley, Balmy Alley, if anyone lives in the neighborhood. You walk all the way down Balmy Alley almost to Garfield Park on the left.
Really?
There's a mural of Manjushri.
Oh, how wonderful. How auspicious.
Very sweet.
That is so auspicious.
Not overly showy mural.
Wow.
It's been there for 30 years. Probably.
That's amazing. Wow. So here
Doesn't
you,
look like that, but
here you see Manjushri seated on the lotus, the lotus of, that, of course, the lotus seat being symbolic of the enlightened state that emerges from the mud of existence, right? And here you have the sword of wisdom, that the flaming sword that cuts through all duality, cuts through all delusion. And this is this very insightful, incisive form of wisdom that Manjushri embodies. And so you can see with all these fine points that Tsongkhapa was trying to establish, he's the perfect deity to ask, right? Then you have also on his other hand, so in his right hand he has the sword of wisdom that cuts through all delusion, and in the other hand he has the sutras, a stack of sutras of knowledge and wisdom, and he also has somewhere in there the flower of all knowledge, and so you see this embodiment of this wisdom. And Maitreya is considered to be the future Buddha, the once and future Buddha, and it is said that Buddha predicted Maitreya's coming, and again that idea of future Buddha, of future existence, can be attained by reaching Tushita heaven, and yet there's all of this prophecy that Maitreya will be here. If you remember, for many years there was that British man. What was his name? Oh, he was such an interesting guy. For 30 years or 40 years, he was a very proper British older man, older by the time I saw him, who went around calling for the manifestation of Maitreya and trying to help people prepare to be able to encounter him. I have to look that up. That was something that was happening in the 70s, in my youth, too long ago. I don't remember his name. So anyway, so Maitreya and Manjushri are here, and so I'll take some questions and then we'll do a meditation. And you can choose which deity you'd like to work with. We can put them maybe side by side. I'll walk you in, don't worry. You don't have to remember it all. So anyone have any questions about what we've been talking about this evening? If you could.
This is circle here.
Okay,
Doesn't amplify you in the room.
great. Isa, I studied with you about 25 years ago with your girlfriend of yours. I don't remember her name, but you had classes, and in the beginning when you were describing that woman's journey through the pond, it took me right back and to the journey that I had through a tree hole, and I was just like, oh my gosh, I haven't thought about that in 25 years, what I entered in the lower realm. But I had so many animal spirits by the time the class was over. I can't remember who I met when. It was
You should reignite your practice.
yeah. I would enjoy that. I'm so sorry I've missed your other talks, and hopefully they're recorded and I
Yeah,
can.
they are.
Great.
They're on the YouTube channel, right?
Great. I guess, this doesn't have to do, we could use
Manjushri.
Manjushri
Yeah, Manjushri.
so
yes.
much
I
right
know.
now.
Yeah,
Oh
because
my God.
the ability to cut through and bring truth.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I guess I have a personal question is, how did you what sparked you to follow this path of studying shamanism all over the world? What happened in your youth that maybe led you, or at some point, to this path?
Well, I had a really interesting early childhood. I grew up in Hawaii, and I went to a missionary school. So I had a really strong connection with Jesus. And I had a lot of Japanese American friends, or Japanese Hawaiian friends, who went to temple every week. And I got to tell you, the big Buddhas and the gongs, I was like in love, right? So I would always I knew when they were going to leave for temple, so I would sort of arrive. Oh, do you want to play? Yeah. Oh, you're going to temple? Oh, yeah. So I'd get a ride to temple regularly. So I became exposed to Buddhism. But then in terms of shamanism, Hawaii is such a powerfully natural world. And I spent most of my time outside. And I was on the beach, whenever I could be, and I was with my best friends were the hibiscus, it's like, so I was very aware of the harmony of the natural world. So, and I in my book, Coming to Peace, I talk about this. Very early on, I wanted to answer to the question, how do we bring the peace and the harmony of nature into the affairs of humans? Why are humans so disordered and unharmonious? And how can we bring the harmony of nature there? So, that was my quest. And so from a very young age, and I started, when I could study academically, I decided to set on a quest to find a religion that would do that. So I got a degree in comparative religion. And, I really settled, I went back to where I came from. I settled on Buddhism and shamanism. And I developed depth hypnosis, which is a process of spiritual counseling that combines the two wisdom systems in a very Manjushri-like fashion, which cuts through a lot of delusion, working with the altered state, helping people get to the source of trauma that is driving disordered surface manifestations. And so, I feel like I have attained I haven't, of course, I haven't arrived anywhere, but I feel like I I did what I set out to do, like I feel like, in my book, Coming to Peace, the subtitle is Resolving Conflict with Others and Within Ourselves. So, I'm still working at it, and in my new book, Depth Hypnosis, I talk more about the intersection between Buddhism and shamanism and the way that it comes together in this therapeutic process that is very, I've seen it help so many people. And that depth hypnosis is a channeled process. I don't often say that, or, like, I don't make a big deal about that. But it came through in the clinical setting. It was as I was working with hypnotherapy and transpersonal psychology and realizing that, suggestion hypnosis just wasn't going to cut it. This person really needs a power retrieval. This person really needs to understand this therapeutic process as a process of spiritual evolution. Like there was all these things that just kind of came together, and it just really revealed itself in the clinical setting. So that's a little bit of my path. Thank you for asking. A question online? Yeah.
Thank you, Isa. I have a question regarding like the beginning of the circle. You had the song, and the end of the circle you have a song. And I'm wondering, in a Buddhist setting, what would be the equivalent?
The prayers.
The
prayers.
Yeah.
You'll often see, if you're around the teacher before they start teaching, they're saying prayers, and then they say prayers afterwards.
Okay. And the ending part would be dedication? Or
Right.
Okay.
Right.
Thank you.
Someone online?
Yes, thank you. I have a question, and first I will thank you and to say how deeply I appreciate this talk. I work with plant medicine.
Mhm.
I had multiple experiences. I'm also a long-term meditator, long time meditator. I'm constantly trying to reconcile the two. And I find it very difficult very often to reconcile the two. So I am so happy to find somebody who already traveled down this road. And
Yeah.
I have a question that actually two questions wrapped into one. Sometimes I'm questioning if it's just different states of consciousness, different layers, different levels, spirit world versus ultimate ground of being.
You can think about it that way. Yeah. Different vibratory rates, different vibratory resonances. Yeah.
Wonderful, thank you. And the second part is I also heard from some of the teachers that all those entities and spirits are simply distractions on the way
Yeah.
to enlightenment. And
Yeah.
I kind of resist that, but I want to hear what you say. That one can in it.
Sorry, I don't mean to keep interrupting you.
So I'm sorry. No, please go ahead.
Okay. I understand that point of view, and I think that, one of the reasons I like to bring together Buddhism with shamanism is because there can be a lack of discipline in shamanic practice. And there can be a lot of distraction into spell casting and that kind of thing, which, in my point of view, is distracting and not useful and dangerous and inappropriate. And I really, the reason that I when I work with shamanic practice, I gather practices that from the different traditions that I studied that are similar, and I work with them outside of the cultural trappings, and work with them on the essential energetic level, and for a very direct reason, for helping people evolve which is not a typical way in which a shamanic practitioner would work. Usually shamanic practitioners are working with, there's not this idea of the evolution of consciousness. There's an idea of healing, or there's an idea of divination, there's an idea of helping the spirits of the dead. But this overarching view of the evolution of the spirit and a movement toward greater consciousness is a very Buddhist idea. And we work with shamanic practices within that framework. And it provides a particular focus and a particular discipline that precludes the kind of distraction. And the distraction, most of the distractions occur in one area of the shamanic cosmography called the middle world. And I have, when I teach, there's a lot that happens in the middle world, which is this world right here and the unseen world right behind it. And there's the only reason that you would interact with those spirits, from an applied shamanism point of view, this is the form of shamanism that I've developed, applied shamanism, is in order to heal, is either to release the spirit toward a better place, or to get them to, there's no like courting those spirits or working with those spirits to do something to someone else that you find a lot in shamanic practice. Like that is like, a no. That is like a no, a strong no in applied shamanism. So I understand that point of view, and I think it's valid. And I think that, I think discipline in all practice is important.
But looking at this like this is evolution of consciousness, and that's maybe different real level.
Yeah, I mean, there's an intention. We're trying to remove, we're working shamanically to remove illusion, to remove delusion, to uncover the karmic patterns, to unwind the karmic patterns through processes like soul retrieval, power retrieval, soul part exchange, energetic interference release. We're working in the enjoyment body in a very dedicated way to resolve karmic patterns that are driving issues like addiction, anxiety, depression, eating disorders. So we're working in a very focused and one-pointed focused way. I'm very boring to eat dinner with because I only talk about this.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Sure.
Thank you so much. The story that you told, I'm sort of stuck on the image of the dog and the maggots and the tongue, and I was wondering, like, I have a psychology background, and I was wondering if, it seemed like that there's something about the encounter with something repellent, that something like that, because you've got this beautiful image of the crow and the water dropping, and then the guy working the needles, and then the sort of the magic happens around this something that's really just sort of like shocking. I mean, from my perspective, and I'm wondering if there's something, how you think about that in terms of like, is it necessary to encounter something really dark that you feel like, before you're able to sort of receive? Like, no.
Okay. I think the point, like, don't ever think that. that's a detour. But the point of that story is, I mean, you can think whatever you want. Sorry, I mean, I'm just trying to help. This is my thought. I think the point of that story was like the decrepitude of the dog. Is indicative. I mean, the point of that is to demonstrate the great depth and breadth of compassion, and that was the transformative agent, right? Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Sure. Yeah.
Do you feel like we have time for more, or do you want to do the?
Yeah, we have a little time.
So I guess I'm curious about tying together, or if you tied together, because my understanding, and I don't know very much about traditional shamanism, pretty much anything I know is through you, but is that often there's like the shaman, right, doing things for people.
Right.
And then also in Vajrayana Buddhism particularly, right, there's lamas and there's rinpoches and there's like, do you draw sort of a parallel between that also? Do you get what I'm saying?
Just in terms of how they interact.
Like there's these sort of embodied enlightened beings, or there's embodied beings like that are emanations, that are tolkus, that are reincarnations.
Yeah, I mean, the shamans have a certain level of wisdom, and rinpoches or lamas have a certain level of wisdom. I think that, in shamanism, there, again, it's a very practical system where you're doing something. You're working with the helping spirits to do something. And in applied shamanism, the thing that you're doing is different forms of healing. But of course, general shamanism, there's all kinds of, curse casting, spell casting, other kinds of things. So it's quite practical, and Buddhism is quite intellectual, and in some ways, it's very, there's a lot of analysis, there's a lot of like thinking about what's happening and dissecting what that is. You don't see that. Shamanism is not intellectual at all. It's very much a heart. It's heart centered in the earth. Like, I mean, ideally, that's where shamanic practitioners are coming from, and that's where, applied shamanism is coming from. For sure.
And then last quick one, the two examples you gave us are just two of many, correct? In the Mahayana canon, like there's many examples of things like that, of deities coming through.
I mean, there's a lot. I mean, there's a lot of practice, but I mean, these two guys, these are like the biggest heavy hitters. Like, yeah. Any other question? Yeah.
Hi, thank you for the talk. When you were describing cosmography, you were mentioning three hierarchies, like the upper world, middle world, and lower world. I'm curious about like what are the characteristics of these worlds, and if there could be more than three.
In some systems, there's less than three, and I guess there could be systems where there's more than three. I haven't encountered them. But really, it's the inner expression of the outer world. So the upper world is the world behind the sky, the middle world is the world behind here, and the lower world is the world below the earth. And in general, statements are made, and in general, I like to have students discover this for themselves when I'm teaching the shamanic journey. If you want to learn more about it, there's a class called the Shamanic Journey at sacredstream.org, and you can take it on demand. And we're right in the middle of one now. If you want to start now and come to the Q&A next week, we can. But it's offered on demand without a live Q&A all year round, and then I offer it 4 or 5 times a year with the live Q&A and a couple of times a year in person, which is always really fun. Yeah, it's really fun. But in general, the statement is made in most traditions that in the upper and lower world, only compassionate beings are found. And in the middle world, just as in this world, you find compassionate beings, but then you find beings of mixed intent. And that's where the distracting spirits kind of hang out. Right. Yeah. Okay. All right. So we're going to do meditation. I teach with Robert Thurman, and every time I go to do a meditation in a Dharma center, if he's not there, I always hear him going, "Okay, get ready to meditate." Ding. That's what he always says, and I'm like, Bob, that is not a hypnotic invitation. into the inner world. So I'm going to offer you a hypnotic invitation into the inner world. I mean, he's great. I mean, I'm not being critical. I think it's funny. But. So just allowing yourself to get settled. Noticing all the places where the surface under you meets the different parts of your body. And as you do, just allowing yourself to begin to notice where your breath is. Just watching your breath as it moves in, and watching your breath as it moves out. And if any other thoughts should come into your mind, just let them pass through like clouds passing through the sky, and then return to your breath. And as you find that inner spaciousness opening with your focus on your breath, you might feel a little bit of spaciousness here in the heart of your attention. Just allow that space to expand a bit as you focus on it, breathing into that space as it opens and breathing out. Expanding that space with each breath, deepening that internal space with each breath. And just allow yourself to feel that space here opening and refocusing on what you've learned and what you already know about Manjushri, the Buddha of infinite wisdom, with their capacity to bring clarity and truth into any situation, holding the flaming sword that cuts through all delusion, all duality, and carrying the wisdom texts in one hand and the sword that cuts through all duality and illusion in the other. And just understanding and experiencing that disciplined mind that focuses on wisdom. That Manjushri holds. And then also focusing on Maitreya, bringing Maitreya into this space. Maitreya, which has all of the golden light of possibility and all of the possibilities held in the enlightened state that moves through time. Maitreya as the master of infinity, holding all time, radiating light through all time. A field where teachings emerge spontaneously. Wisdom emerges spontaneously. And radiates through that golden light. And just allowing yourself to feel if you feel drawn to one field more than the other, or if you feel drawn to both equally. If you feel drawn to Manjushri more, focus your intention on Manjushri and bring your breath into that space where you're inviting Manjushri, and align your breath with Manjushri in that space that is opened up through your focus on your breath. And if you feel drawn to Maitreya, bring Maitreya into that space that's opened up through your focus on your breath. And bring that radiant light moving through all time, wisdom moving through all time into your awareness, and align your breath with Maitreya. Or if you want to hold them both in this internal space and move between the two, you can do that. But go ahead and focus your concentration on one. And if you're going to do the other, then do the other. But start with having total focus on one of these deities with your breath, breathing in to the field that they represent and expanding your connection with that field with each breath and focusing only on that field. And if you decide you want to work with the other deity, go ahead and focus only into that field, aligning your breath with that field, breathing in and breathing out of that field. Otherwise, just stay with the deity that you've chosen. And then coming back and just focusing on your breath, knowing you can return to this inner space at any time. And work with either deity to learn more about aligning with their fields, or with both deities and learning about how to align with their fields. But for now, just coming back to your breath. And as you return to your breath, just feeling the surface under you, noticing again all the places where it meets the different parts of your body. And just following your breath back out into the room as you exhale. And whenever you're ready, just opening your eyes, you'll be back in the room, remembering everything. Just reflecting on your meditation for a moment. The sun is a circle. The moon is a circle. The earth is a circle. The drum is a circle. We are a circle within a circle. Thank you, everyone. May all beings be free. Ding.